Welcome to Bowtie, sometimes called myself Ashley and Ed. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Ed. Ed. Well, yeah, I'm a bit confused this evening because it's not our usual Friday, so it's actually Sunday. Good evening, Ash. I'm Ed.
And this evening we are talking about Superman, more specifically the definitive Superman. I mean, I don't think I should have to explain this to our listeners, but you never know. The one and only Christopher Reeve. So, Ed, you love doing your preparation. I mean, I do prep, but in other ways. But yeah, you've been, watching the films, especially the second one, the Donna Cuttons, what have you. So let's start off with you actually, as it's fresh in your mind. Give a little summary of the Reeve era.
So this is a bit of a funny one. This I didn't see the original Christopher Reeve Superman the movie till about 5 years ago. I missed it when I was a child. Saw Superman
Surprise.
2. I know Super. Saw Superman 2 in the cinema when it came out, loved it. Saw Superman 3, loved it. Didn't see The Quest for Peace. Have seen it since, wasn't missing much. But for me, I don't only think Superman 2 is the best Superman film. I think it's possibly the best superhero film ever made. And it's so good, it was made twice. Like you alluded to, there are two different cuts of it. There's the Richard Donner cut and there's the Richard Lester cut. So the Richard Lester cut was the one that made it to the cinema screens. There were some behind the scenes fallings out and shenanigans, which led to Richard Donner, who was the original director, basically being removed from the project and being replaced. And they are, to be honest with you, I've watched them almost back to back. They're like two separate films. It's sort of, the emphasis are different, the scenes are different. There's sort of longer scenes, shorter scenes. I think the Donner cut is more gritty. There's not half as much humor in it, which I think it needs. Yeah, and you've got like the three supervillains, Ursula, Sod, and Non. They're released from the Phantom Zone in a different way in the Donner cut. Marlon Brando is in the Donner cut as Jor-El rather than Susanna York as Kal-El's mother. So there are massive differences to both of them, even though it's the same story. The emphasis is and the way it's told are completely different. I mean, they're different enough to almost be viewed as two completely separate films.
Yeah, we'll come back to Superman 2 in a second. I kind of want to go back a step then, really. So Superman the movie, too long, really, probably. Doesn't need to explain everything like it does. We know who Superman is. But I suppose as a film, guessing if you've never knew anything about Superman, tells the whole story. But it is a bit too long. I mean, let's go back a step about the conception of sort of the conceptual idea of Superman.
Well, Superman came about because both Joe Shuster and I were great science fiction fans back in the 1930s. And to fill you in a little on the beginning of it all, one night, as has been mentioned in past stories, ideas kept coming to me, and I kept getting up again and again during the night and just jotting down these ideas and these scripts until very early the next morning. I dashed over to Joe's house, which is about 10 blocks away. I showed him the script of Superman, the entirely new concept in which there would be a meek, mild-mannered reporter, Clark Kent, Lois Lane, who scorned him, but who flipped over Superman, not knowing that Superman and Clark Kent were one and the same person. Now,
I wanted to give him a skin-tight costume to show up his physique, for one thing, and then Jerry suggested putting on
a cape.
A cape,
so that when the character zoomed through the air, would give more action and movement to the character.
Make it look like he's really flying. Yeah. And very, very
and of
colorful.
course, you added all those additional things like the boots and the belt and the and the whatever.
I wanted to make it as simple as possible.
Yeah. And what about Clark Kent?
Well, both Joe and I, wear glasses, most of the times. And it occurred to me that there was no adventure comic strip hero at that time who wore glasses, so I thought it would be quite different to have Clark Kent wear glasses. And also, The wearing of glasses gives the impression of meekness and mildness, which goes into Harold Lloyd, the influence of Harold Lloyd on us and his movies. We were both great movie fans, and we especially loved some of those movies in which Harold Lloyd would start off as a sort of mama's boy, being pushed around, kicked around, thrown around, and then suddenly would turn into a fighting whirlwind.
Christopher Reeve was in the, obviously was in the first film, but he was actually in it from the very beginning. Jeffy played the teenage Superman, but with the exception of maybe one or two lines, Christopher Reeve dubbed most of Jeff East's lines. Then he goes to the Fortress of Solitude, and he spends 12 years in the Fortress of Solitude, so he goes there as Jeff East, and he exits as a man, Christopher Reeve, 6'4" and 225 pounds, trained in weightlifting and so on by Dave Prowse, Darth Vader.
Dozens of stars and hundreds of unknowns were tested, and none of them were right. They kept coming back to a young man they'd seen earlier in their search, Christopher Reeve. At first, they'd considered him too young and maybe even too skinny, but his mature calm made a continuing impact.
I wore a big, bulky blue sweater because I thought, oh my God, I've got to look stronger, you know, and I knew I was skinny. I'd been sitting around, hadn't been exercising. I mean, I get out and play tennis and stuff, but I don't in any way do body stuff. So I got the biggest Shetland sweater I could find up in my attic and went to this audition with it and sat there sort of trying to look bigger, you know, and everything like that. And it was Ilya Salkind and Dick Donner who were the directors. And all they did, they put a pair of glasses on me and they sort of looked at me, you know, it was, and we talked about New York and blah, 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 and nothing in particular, and I left. When I started, I was a string bean, and Superman's not a string bean, so already on this diet, I eat 4 times a day. I tell you, I'm on a meat diet, protein diet, vitamin pills, nothing like steroids or anything like that, but I mean, I get to eat as much of as anything that I want, and it's great, you know. The thing is that on this part particularly, you have to start from the outside and work in. You can do all the interior work you want to do, and it's not going to get you to Superman if you don't have the physical strength to go with it. The thing that happens is that the stronger I get, you know, and I'm still not all that strong, but I'm getting there. The stronger I get, the more it helps my mental attitude towards the part.
So yeah, when Reeve got the role, I mean, he was quite slim, quite slender, but by the end of it, he was really sort of built up, and looks like the perfect Superman. I mean, in this film and 2. Looks really, really good. Looks good in 3. Actually, looks good in 3. I suppose that just 1 and 2, he dyed his hair black by the time he got to Superman 3. Christopher Reeve was thinning a little bit. I think he was quite conscious of that. So by the time he got today, he started wearing a wig. But anyway, so Superman 1, just a little bit long for me, but I do like it. Superman 2 is definitely the best.
I tend to try and bring everything around to Doctor Who. And I will bring this round to Doctor Who because my favourite, it's quite surprising, my favourite, not only Superman film, my favourite superhero film ever is Superman 2, where someone gives up his powers and becomes an ordinary human being. My favourite Doctor Who story is called Human Nature, and exactly the same thing. The Doctor stops being a Time Lord, becomes an ordinary human being at a time where the world needs them the most. So I think that brief period in Superman 2 as well, where he's just an ordinary human being, makes you realise how much the world needs a hero at that time. You know, you've got Clark Kent in the diner being beaten to a pulp by that redneck, which is almost like, you know, it's a metaphor for what is going on in the rest of the world, where the president is being subdued by the 3 supervillains. So, but there's no, unfortunately, at this time, because Superman has given up his powers for love, then there's no one to save the world.
You all right, fella?
He's gonna be fine. Just give me that. Clark?
Blood. It's my blood. I think maybe we ought to hire a bodyguard from now on.
I don't want a bodyguard. I want the man I fell in love with.
I know that, Lois. But I wish you were here.
Clark? Clark? Clark, can you get up? Come on. All right, come on.
Slow.
I got you.
Go slow.
Try and get up in that chair. Ooh, sit down.
I'm right.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, he's all right. Just relax, and we'll have some fresh coffee, and I'll turn the box on.
Oh, but isn't it fantastic back at the end when he goes back?
Excuse me, sir. I think you're sitting in my favorite seat.
Well, come and get it, Flies. Oh. Oh. Oh, God! Oh.
This order's to go. I'm terribly sorry about all the damage, sir. Well, I've been working out.
Now then, here's one for you. You've been a Bond fan. I brought Doctor Who. I'm going to bring Bond in. Now, the same cop that played the cop in Live and Let Die, and sorry, the same actor that played the cop in Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun also appears in Superman 2 as a redneck sheriff.
Yeah, he
Sheriff.
does. Yeah.
Never named on screen. So, is it possible that Superman and James Bond exist in the same universe?
It is quite possible. Yeah, I mean, it's never. Yeah, he's never named, but he's clearly playing exactly the same character. Yeah, I mean, a lot of films. I mean, they're intertwined. Like Tom Mankiewicz, who did some of the Bond films, he was involved in this. Paul Weston, who did a lot of the stunts, he was a stunt coordinator for a lot of the Bond films. He did a lot of stuff on the Superman films. In fact, I think makes a little cameo in Superman 3. There's a few cameos going through the Superman films as well. Richard Donner's in one of them. He makes a little cameo. We'll probably insert a few of them here. And of course, I think it was just because perhaps where they were filmed, because they were filmed in Pinewood, weren't they? You know, the Superman films were filmed in the UK. So I guess maybe that's just the industry. You had like a close-knit team of people that tend to co-work on different projects together, Superman 3, I mean, that was made in the UK as well. I think some of it is obviously shot overseas. Ed, what's unique about Superman 3?
Okay, well, the only thing I can think is unique about Superman 3 is that Bob Todd from the Benny Hill Show makes a cameo in it.
Oh, well, I didn't know that one. Put that one in. No, it's not that. It's the only one where the titles don't start off in space.
Okay.
They went down a bit more of a comedy road, didn't it? It starts off with that whole thing of the blind man walking along and then, knocking over the telephone boxes and the penguins going on fire, and it's all set in just a street, isn't it? And that's where the titles are. So yeah. John Williams scored Superman, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. A piece of music.
But he didn't actually do Superman 2 or so on.
I noticed that when I was watching it earlier on today. I actually watched the Leicester cut earlier on today, and it's music by I can't remember who, but based on John Williams' work.
Yeah, Ken Thorne, who was apparently a friend of John Williams, I think. So that's how he got that gig. He was introduced. It's like John Williams was like, I can't do it because he was doing Certainly he was doing. Perhaps it was one of the Raiders or Star Wars. He was
Raiders or Empire, maybe.
Yeah, so he was, yeah. He had to pass on that one. Hey, go back to Donna though for a second. I know you mentioned Richard Lester, but Richard Lester was Donna was actually nearly did Superman 4. But he was asked to do Superman. He was asked to do Superman 4, but Superman 4. I mean, we'll cover off Superman 4. Do you know what? We've done 1 and 2. We'll go back to 3 in a second. Superman 4. Whilst we're on the subject, what can we say about it, Ed? Really?
I like camp. I like silly, but Superman 4. I don't know. It's not even. You can't even like it in the same way as you like Adam West Batman. It's just a bad film, unfortunately.
Christopher Reeve apparently reportedly told his dad never to watch Superman 3 or 4 because he didn't like either of them. I didn't think 3 was too bad, to be fair. But
three's okay. That's Richard Pryor and Robert Vaughn, is it, and Pamela Stevenson?
Yeah,
I didn't mind 3 at all. It was one of those things. One I probably saw in the cinema more than once. Like I remember it was 83. It came out 84.
Yeah,
3.
83. Yeah.
Around about the same time as Return of the Jedi, and I remember seeing it a couple of times in the cinema because I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was all right. I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
I'll try and find the photo of it, but it's really hard, difficult to find sometimes. Christopher Reeve turned up on the set as dressed as Batman one day when they were filming the last scene. Well, no, not the last scene, but one of the last bits in the film. When the machine's he's fighting against the machine. Yeah. Anyway, they were doing that, and he just turned up on the set when they were doing that, dressed as Batman. And everyone burst out into hysterics. And apparently, another little tidbit, which is just on the same thing, Robert Vaughn, after that, couldn't take his grandkids to the school, apparently, because none of them liked him because he nearly killed Superman. So, what else about Superman 3? What's special about Superman 3? Well, Superman 4. So Superman 3 is obviously Superman versus Superman, yeah, in a way, isn't it? Good versus.
The good guy Superman.
Yeah, which they wanted to call it Superman versus Superman, but the guys that were doing Kramer versus Kramer threatened to sue, I think. So they just decided to go with Superman 3, which is fine. But then Superman 4 in the early stages, I think, was going to be almost like a copy again. I think Nuclear Man, because he's obviously been made by Lex Luthor, was going to be, and from Superman's DNA, was going to potentially be played by Christopher Reeve as well, as a very dark character. But that didn't happen. Then we ended up with the chap that we ended up with. But in between, we also had Clive Mantle as well as Nuclear Man. Those scenes got cut. Did you ever see that? Have you ever seen those scenes?
They may well be on the Blu-ray. I don't know. I might have seen them a long, long time ago. I don't know.
It's hysterical. I mean, it had to get cut, though, to be fair. Hang on, wait a minute.
I think when you said Clive Mantle, it wasn't a surprise. So I think I saw it in the back of my mind.
see, just when you thought Superman 4 couldn't get any worse, it could have done.
Funny what you're showing there. That's I was going to come back to something I picked up on in Superman 2. You had a massive product placement there for Burger King.
Yeah. And
Superman 2 was quite interesting, the product placement I noticed, because I remember I was in primary school. Superman was the face of the anti-smoking campaign. You had Superman comics given out in school with Superman fighting a villain called Nicotine, who was trying to get children to smoke. But the product placement for Marlboro cigarettes in Superman 2, it's all over the place.
Superman!
I mean, Superman's meant to be this sort of champion of sort of clean living and things, but you've got the three main product placements, like I've seen it, was Marlboro cigarettes, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Coca-Cola.
yeah. There is quite a lot, but you sort of talk about Superman being the thing for clean living and what have you. There's also in Superman, the first one, where he's there with Lois Lane and he's doing the interview and he goes, "I never lie." Well, apart from when he's Clark Kent all the time, but yeah. so I don't think there's been any other actor, and this is why Christopher Reeve is my definitive Superman, who has been able to play such a brilliant Clark Kent. You actually, apart from the fact that, well, they do look a bit different because Reeve did his hair in a separate way, and obviously, yeah, okay, I think you'd still work it out. But anyway, let's just forget that for a second. In terms of character and how he plays them, I mean, they're just worlds apart. You could actually think, oh yeah, that's quite believable that somebody wouldn't join the dots.
Now, I'm going to bring a long-time listener, Matthew, in here, because I had this conversation with him the other day about it, and he thinks it's absolutely ridiculous that nobody realises that Clark Kent is Superman. I put it to him that it's got to be that he's got some sort of aura that he gives out where it makes people forget, like at the end of Superman 2, he kisses Lois Lane and she forgets, that he exudes some sort of aura to make people think, no, I can't, and to confuse them. He disagrees completely.
Reeve could pull it off. None of the others, to me, I just watch it. I mean, Dean Cain, my wife loves Dean Cain. She loves Dean Cain. And he'll always be her Superman. But, I mean, there's no difference between Clark Kent and Superman in the Dean Cain ones, really. You know, just literally just puts a suit on or a pair of glasses. I mean, there's no difference. Sorry, Dean, if you're listening. Perhaps I should take that back, actually. Perhaps we might ask him on one day. I think Dean's fantastic, to be honest with you. No, but there isn't that much difference between them, is there? There's not. I can't think of any other portrayal where there's quite that stark contrast between the two. Like,
no, I mean his body language is completely different when he's Clark Kent. The way he holds himself, his mannerisms, his sort of tics. There's no similarity apart from them. They look the same. But I can see why, you know, you wouldn't think that Christopher Reeve's Clark Kent and Christopher Reeve's Superman are the same person. The act is so good. You know, this sort of bumbling, incompetent, lovable sort of bit of a loser journalist who happens to be 6 foot tall and built like that. But, and then this wonderful sort of man of steel that's going to save us all. You think, they can't be the same person. It's one of those. I think as well, I was saying to my wife earlier on watching Superman 2, there's a scene where Superman and Lois Lane are in the Fortress of Solitude having dinner. And I don't know if there's something done ever so slightly different with the way the makeup is applied to Christopher Reeve when he's Superman as to when he's Clark Kent. Obviously, the hair's a little bit different, but his face, his cheekbones look a little bit more chiseled when he's Superman. The lighting, I think, as well, is slightly different on him when he's Superman to when he's Clark Kent. So there's a lot of little directorial things that are done behind the scenes to give that slight difference as well. But I really am of the mind that the character Superman exudes some sort of aura that makes people not realize he's Clark Kent, because that's the only way I can think he can do it.
Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
So Superman 1, I would give it probably 7.5, 8 out of 10. You?
I'd be about 7 because of the ending. I love the film, and I unlike you, I don't think it's too long. I like the build-up. I like the bits with him as a kid, and the whole story getting. I like a long story, but I hated the ending, where he turns time back by flying around the world the other way. It really, really, really bugs me.
Okay.
But it was all right apart from that.
Okay. Right. Well, we'll leave that one. Superman 2. I'm going to give Superman 2 a 10.
Yeah, I would give the Richard Lester cut 10, and I would give the Richard Donner cut 9.
Okay, we'll go with that one. Yeah, cool. Superman 3. I would give Superman 3 probably an 8.5.
Yeah, I'm going to give it, say, 7.5, 8, because it's fun. It doesn't pretend to be great art or anything. It's just a really good, fun, entertaining film. So yeah, I'd say 7.5.
Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
It's bad.
I'd
probably give it 1 point for Christopher Reeve, 1 point for Gene Hackman, and 1 point for Margot Kidder, so 3.
Yeah, I give it. I'll be a bit more gentle, 4. But yeah, that film though, I mean, there was very nearly a 5th as well, because the film originally was the original cut was about an hour. It was about another 45 minutes longer, but they cut it down. And they were going to use some of that footage potentially for a 5th one. Oh, God. Well, actually, I mean, it might have been okay if they got different people on board. But I do like the scene when, because basically he's virtually on his deathbed, isn't he? And he gets his crystal out, and you see him, and like first time you think, oh, Superman's in trouble here. He's gone grey. He's looking ill, sweating. He's like, yeah, this is. And then the next scene, after he's got his crystal out, he's there, back. I like that one, and I like the whole thing, which is a bit similar in Superman 2 as well. After he's been into the, can't try and think what they call the chamber. Can't think what they call it, but it's
the molecule chamber. Yeah,
that emits red sunlight, which basically turns Superman human. Although in the comic books, it doesn't turn in completely human. It wears off after a while. I think he has to have some other. There's another one. I think there's a gold chamber that turns you properly human. But anyway, we won't get bogged down in technicals. So, but I like that, and then the fact that afterwards he goes back, finds that crystal, and next time you see it.
General? Would you care to step outside?
Superman!
Superman, thank God. I mean, get him!
Come to me, son of Jor-El! Kneel before Zod!
Christopher Reeve, though, a really excellent actor. All the things he did before Superman and during the time he was famous as Superman. There's a few films he's in, and he's amazing. There's a film called Somewhere in Time, which is like, it's a romantic time travel thing where he travels back in time to sort of turn the century to meet the woman of his dreams, and he's brilliant in it.
Are you all right? The company, are they gone?
Company?
Damn it, the ones who did the play last night, where are they? They gone?
They left as soon as they were packed, sir.
And there's another really, really good one called Death Trap with him and Michael Caine. Really worth. If you haven't seen it, really worth seeing.
Why, look, a brick fireplace. I wonder if it is practical to the extent that paper can burn in it.
Stop right where you are, fella. You burn that, and I'll go right out of here and write it someplace else. Now you give it to me. Give it to me!
And then the poor man, I mean, his career was cut short by that atrocious accident, which finally took his life. Yeah. You know, the poor guy was wheelchair bound for the short term of the rest of his life. And he carried on acting. He's an inspiration. He became an inspiration for a generation, again in a different way.
Yeah, no, it's tragic as well. But I mean, there was that talk, wasn't there, about the curse of Superman, really? But I don't think that holds water now. But because George Reeve, he committed suicide from what I can gather. Christopher Reeve, obviously we know what happened to him. Margot Kidder, she had a bit of a breakdown apparently. And then Donna Reeve, Christopher Reeve's wife, literally about 18 months after Christopher Reeve died, she died herself. It's just like very tragic set of circumstances. Now, I'm going off on a complete tangent, but I'm just going to say it because it's in my head. Do you know who Christopher Reeve nearly didn't do Superman 3, apparently? I mean, it's reported, who knows, that one actor was approached to play Superman instead. And you'll never guess who it is, Ed.
I could probably be naming actors from the 80s till midnight, so I'm going to give it one guess.
All I would say is, think about the hairstyle.
That's what I'm thinking about. Not Sir Rog, surely.
No, not Roger. No, John Travolta.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it could have worked, potentially. Could have worked. I was a bit like, nah, but then I thought, well, no. Go back to the 70s when he was like Danny Zuko and stuff. He had that he did have that sort of look about it. He could have maybe made it work.
And there were rumours in the 90s before the Brandon Routh film came out that Nicolas Cage was going to be Superman. And again, I can quite see Nicolas Cage as maybe not as Clark Kent, but as Superman.
There's footage online of him being tested with his suits, wearing the Superman suits. They were a bit weird, those suits that he was going to wear. And it was going to be, but then again, it'd be no surprise when you find out who was going to direct it, which was going to be Tim Burton.
So Nick, like movement and stuff seems pretty good. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, you were saying it'll feel a little looser the more I wear it.
Yeah, it's really tight.
This is great. Look at that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Wow.
You know,
that's
that
the hardest
good.
thing.
Yeah, but that works.
You know, it's like it has the imagination of the child. Sparkle does.
Sounds
good.
good.
What about Clark Kent later?
Yeah, well, you can just dull it.
We can just do something different.
No, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, that gives it that kind
That's
of
that thing
magical.
too. We were talking because we're talking about like when he's that he's just more heightened. So
Yeah,
we
exactly.
would do
And
Yeah.
this is nowhere near strong enough for all.
Yeah, I think you want to see this.
Yeah.
With,
I agree,
in
actually.
its entirety without it going into.
Did you design the S thing?
Well, we kind of took it off from the more modern ones where it's a little just sleeker.
No, that's the whole thing.
That's the- 'cause
We would
Krypton
make
one
it
thing.
reminiscent of whatever we see on Krypton. That's the whole.
My father wore this cape.
So it was going to be a slightly different take on Superman. But yeah, I mean, he got to the point where he was all fitted up with his Superman suit and stuff. Nicolas Cage loves Superman. In fact, his kids,
Is it called Jor-El or Jor-El?
Yeah. Is it Carl or Kal-El? One of his kids is named after a Superman character. Anyway. So that was our chat about Superman, the Christopher Reeve era. I think we're going to come back and do Superman 2 standalone. I think.
Yeah, that'd be good.
At some point, not too distant future. We've been Bowties Sometimes Cool. Thanks for listening. Matthew, I look forward to your feedback tomorrow, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye from me and bye from Ed.
Goodbye.